Hello. Today I'm going to talk about Native Americans of the Plains. Going to do a quick summary of what you read in that one. So we're talking about, you can see in this map on this page, the Plains, pretty much the middle of what is now the United States. So everything in blue, the purple you see there. And there are several groups in there. You have the Mandan up northern part of what is now Wyoming. Then you have the Crow, the Cheyenne, Lakota, the Pawnee, and then the Seminoles. So there's several different groups that lived on the plains. First, the Native Americans hunted on foot using bows and arrows, like the pictures I showed you in the last one. We talked about people of the Southwest. And another thing that they would use is they would have the animals stampede into traps. So they would scare like the buffalo to fall over a cliff, and then they would go and get the animals from there. But then things changed. Horses started to arrive, making it a lot easier for them to hunt, and they can now travel farther. So it had a big impact, the arrival of horses did, as far as hunting and being able to travel farther and trading with other groups. One of the big animals that was important to the plains people was bison or buffalo. There's a slight little difference, but millions of buffalo or bison roamed the Great Plains, and they provided a lot to the Native Americans, whether it was food, clothing, shelter, because their shelter living was teepees. And so the buffalo hide made excellent skin to put around the teepee. Another type of building they stayed in were earthen lodges. And as you read, earthen lodges are basically their logs, making the frame, covered with grasses, sticks, and soil. Then you'd have a fireplace in the middle. So that's where the plains people lived, or teepees or lodges. Life on the plains was important. Was important. Life on the plains had its challenges and it also its positives. Fire was very important, not only for cooking, for warmth, but it's also what they used to frighten the herd into a stampede where they would run over a cliff, fall to their death, and then the hunters would gather the meat, the skins, everything they needed. And they used a thing called a travois. It's a sled type looking thing that they load it up with the meat, the bones, anything they needed, and bring it back. They had dogs to help pull those, and eventually horses did that. During cold winter months, they spent a lot of their time inside, close to a fire, making clothes, weapons, tools, anything that they would need for survival. And they also created something called winter counts. And a lot of Native American tribes count their years by how many winters. So they ask a Native American child during this time, how old are they? They would say, I'm 9 winters, or I'm 10 winters old. So they base it on how many winters. So here, they would create something like this using symbols to represent different events that happen through that year. Life for children on the plains was to spend a lot of time learning things, learning skills they would need to survive living on the plains. So they learned how to listen by listening to their elders telling them stories, singing songs. Boys were taught how to hunt and shoot, using small bows and arrows, things like that. Then they would practice in battling and fighting. And they learned the idea of courage and how important courage could be. And they did that using something called the coup stick. And it just basically they would try to hold the coup stick up to close to somebody as they could. So that's what it was for, to touch an enemy without killing them. Girls learned different skills. They learned to sew by having toy dolls, using sinews from bison. Sinews are a tendon that connects muscle to bone. So you have the muscle connecting the bone, and there's a sinew. They could use that to sew it. It's a very strong material. Girls were also given toy teepees to learn how to set them up, because it was a very important role. The women of the tribe, it was their job to take care of the teepee. So the girls learned how to do that as young children. So everything that the plains children learned as kids is something that they would need, the skills they would need as they were an adult. And they're also expected to be generous, respectful. So a lot was expected of plains children. So now I'm going to show you some pictures. One plains group was called the Pawnee. And here's an example of a Pawnee Earth Lodge, as soon as it loads here. So this is going inside. I don't know who these people are. I took this picture of me at a museum in Chicago. So we're going inside the Earth Lodge. Some Earth Lodges are smaller, some larger. This is a replica one, so a fake one they had up in this museum. So going inside, they have a fireplace. Obviously, it's a fake fireplace. And you can see some of the different things. This is that travois over here. This is made out of usually the ribs of a bison. And here they just take other things, take a log, carve out a little bowl-shaped thing. This is a metal pot and pan up here. And eventually when settlers from Europe started coming over, they learned to trade for those things. So just some things Plains people would use. Here they have some part of their Earth Lodge might be devoted to honoring the bison. So you can see the bison skull up here. And this is just a place where they give thanks to the bison for all that the bison provided them. And here around the outside of the Earth Lodge is where the members of this group would sleep. So you can see using the hides of animals and things like that as blankets. Just another example of a bed and a dream catcher up there. Dream catcher is important in many Native American cultures. Here looking at the top, you can see it has the opening at the top so the smoke from the fire can go up. So again, Earth Lodge is just, you can see these support beams here covered with sod, grass, other sticks on top to make the outside walls. Now that we talked about a little bit ago about how the native people of the plains would have the bison get into a stampede, so they'd scare them. Then they would just basically using fire and other things, and they would force them off a cliff, and they'd fall to their death. If they happen to survive, there will be other hunters down at the bottom to make sure they get killed. Big game hunting was an important means of livelihood for the Indians who lived on the Great Plains from the time first man arrived there until the historic period. There were times when farming, the gathering of wild plant foods, and the hunting of small game were also important, but the pursuit of big game for food, skins, which were used for clothing and shelter, bones for scrapers, awls, and other tools, and dung, which is the animal's poop, would be used to burn for fuel. Was always a basic feature of Plains Indian life. As with the early Indian cultures of the eastern woodlands, the atlatl, which we'll learn more about in 6th grade, it's like a spear type thing you can throw. The atlatl was the principal weapon of these plains hunters. The practice of stampeding herds of game animals such as bison over cliffs was also common, which you can see in that picture there. Here's just another example of them doing that. You can see they're using other hides and things, and then to force the bison down over the cliff. Here is that model of a child sled, which we call a travois. It's just a smaller one. And it's made out of animal rib bones, typically have been bison bones. Here are another examples of some tools they would use in the plains. People you can see using antlers to make rakes. Here are another examples of travois that they could have used. These are a basket style variety with some weaving in the middle. This just talks about the houses they use. The teepee and the Earth Lodge were the principal house types of the Plains Indians. The nomadic, non-farming tribes lived in teepees year-round. It's nomadic means they're moving around. So if they're moving around, it's easier to have a teepee to go with them because you can pack a teepee up and move. The farming hunting tribes lived in teepees while following the buffalo herds in summer. The rest of the year, most of them lived in earth lodges in their permanent villages. So the animals are moving, the people will follow them having teepee. Normally a teepee housed a man, his wife, or wives, and children. Now I'm going to skip down to the other one. Earth lodges built mainly by women were large dome-shaped structures, 40 to 50 feet in diameter. More permanent than teepee, they lasted from 7 to 10 years. And Earth lodges housed several related families. So that's the difference. Teepees, smaller people, smaller families living in. Earth lodge, you're going to have more people in there because they're bigger. So here are some examples of model teepees. So you can see slightly different designs. Some Native American tribes put painted designs on the outside. Some did not. It just depended on what their culture. Here is an inside look at an Earth lodge. Yep, you can see the animals would also have been kept inside the Earth Lodge because they were a valued part of the group. So they wanted to make sure they were taken care of. And if they're inside, it's also safer for them. They're more protected inside the Earth Lodge. Pipes are an important part of Native American culture, whether it's could have ceremonies celebrating things, or maybe they use them to ward off evil spirits. So pipes have very different meanings in Native American cultures depending on which group. So here you can see are some examples of some different pipes that they would have used, and they're smoking usually tobacco in these. So these are ceremonial pipes. So that's right. That's the last picture I have there. So thank you for listening to my presentation on Native Americans of the Plains. Have a good day. Take care. Bye.